agenda for us.
Item 4A, excuse the absences of council members Byrd and Peters. 4B, approval of minutes, November 17, 2021 regular meeting. 4C, Lakewood Transmission Main Construction and Permanent Easements. 4D, a tax abatement, set a public hearing for PA 198 tax abatement for Sherlock Aluminum Edging Inc. for property located at 310 East 64th Street. 4E, the Finance Department, schedule of fees and charges for 2022. 4F, speculative tax abatement, set a public hearing for PA 198 speculative tax abatement for Electric Steel LLC for property located at 72 West 64th Street. 4G, Finance, October financial reports. 4H, Purchasing, award bids for portable restroom services. 4I, Management and Administrative Services, revocable license agreement, Macatawa Area Transit Authority for Van Ralty and 18th Street Boys and Girls Club Stop. 4J, Management and Administrative Services, a revocable license agreement, Macatawa Area Transit Authority, 600 Van Ralty Avenue, Holland High School Stop. And 4K, Management and Administrative Services, the Downtown Group, an amendment to the Double Up Food Bucks grant for Holland Farmers Market.
Great. Thank you, Brenda. Is there any member of the audience who would like an item removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda? Seeing none, is there any member of council that would like an item removed from the consent agenda? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Mr. Mayor, I would request that item 4F, speculative tax abatement, be removed from consent.
All right. 4F, which would then, that gets placed. Let me make sure we've got that in the right spot then on the regular agenda, which would be 12E 4.3. Anyone else? All right, what is the pleasure of council in regard to the consent agenda?
Move to approve the presented agenda, minus the exception on letter F.
Great, thank you, Mr. Vreeman. Is there any support? Support by Mr. Hoekstra. All those, we need a roll call on this. Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Vreeman.
Yes.
Corbin. Yes. Coronado.
Yes.
Aaronsworth.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond.
Yes.
And Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Next, our public comment. Under the Open Meetings Act of the State of Michigan, we allow for public comment at every one of our meetings. This is one-way communication. It's your opportunity to talk to council members. We do not engage in discussion or answer questions at this time, but it gives you the opportunity to tell us what you believe is an important issue or a topic. We ask that you limit your time to 5 minutes. There are 3 lights on the dais in front of me, a green light, a yellow light, and a red light. The green light means you're doing well on time. The yellow light means you have 1 minute left, and the red light means that your time has expired, and we are strict about that. And when you approach the podium, we ask that you please state your name and address for the record. Is there anyone who would like to address council at this time? And if so, please come forward. And would you please state your name and address for the record?
Ann Henriksen, Zeeland. Mayor Box made a declaration that this month is to be observed as Homeless Awareness Month. I thank both Mayor Box and Councilwoman Raymond for reaching out to the population in Holland that spends the cold winter living in their cars or in their tents. You may know the following story. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or give you drink? When did we see you as a stranger and take you in, or without clothes and clothed you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visited you?" Then the king will answer them, I assure you, whatever you did to one of these, the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me. One of the most wonderful things in Holland, Michigan is the generous spirit of many organizations that care for those in need. Some that come to mind are Gateway, Holland Rescue Mission, Women in Transition, Winning at Home, Community Action House, Habitat for Humanity, Escape Ministries, 70 times 70, ministry, prison ministries, to mention a few. Many churches are involved in kids' home ministries and hand-to-hand food pantries. There are so many more within churches. Not all these ministries are in the city limits, but they help those in the Holland area. It was 2 years ago in December that the Holland is Ready and the LGBT out on the lakeshore proposed the city council adopt an anti-discrimination ordinance for employment and housing. What was significant was the word sex was changed from male and female within the ordinance to sexual orientation, sexual identity, and expression. This was the language recommended by the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. It passed without any additions or changes from the council. There was a ministry who contacted their lawyer about the ordinance. They house the homeless. They house the homeless and try to redirect their lives with the help of the Bible. What if the trans woman wanted to help and expected to be housed in the men's facility? The Michigan LGBT plus activism groups would be more than happy to set up a lawsuit against this ministry. With that fear in mind, their lawyer contacted the city and was told not to worry because they would be protected within the Michigan Elliott Larson civil rights law. It defines sex as male and female. Yet your ordinance defines sex as sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So in Holland, does a trans woman have the right to stay in a man's only shelter? What about the bathrooms? What about children ministries that will not accommodate using the correct pronoun for a child who claims to be not their birth gender? They're being taught in school that they have rights as protection for diversity, equity, and inclusion. A ministry like Kids Hope, founded here in Holland, may be at risk, according to your ordinance. Another reality of these ministries were accused of discriminating against transgender individuals, according to the ordinance, could be fined and incur financial burden of legal fees that would finally bankrupt them. They would be forced to close, and these generous ministries would who adhere to the Bible and salvation in the name of Jesus would be closed, and the homeless would suffer. Let me continue. The king said, for I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't take me in, naked, and you didn't clothe me, and sick and in prison, and you didn't take care of me. Then they will too answer, Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or without clothes or sick or in prison and not help you? Then the king will answer them, I assure you, whatever you did not do for the least of these brothers of mine, you did not do for me either. The story is King Jesus. Here's my proposal. Be fair to these ministries and their existence and amend your anti-discrimination ordinance and exempt these ministries from the punitive damage that would make so many suffer. This month is Homeless Awareness Month. I appeal to you, put teeth to your proclamation and adopt this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address council at this time? Seeing none, I will close the public comment period. Next item on the agenda, item 9, written petitions and communications. In addition to allowing for in-person public comment, we do also have an email address where you can send your comments to council. That is publiccomment@cityofholland.com. Repeat that, publiccomment@cityofholland.com. Council members read those. We collect those in the time in between the meetings, and then we accept those into the record at our regular scheduled meetings, and we do not have any this evening, so we don't have to do any, but I just want to make sure that people were aware of that. Next item on the agenda, item 10, adoption of ordinances. 10A, text amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance, the UDO, final adoption. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council. We have 2 items this evening under adoption of ordinances. Both of them, because this is a two-step process, so you have heard this information once, and then tonight is proposed the final adoption on that. First up is Tricia and Steve, and I think even in the PowerPoint they say take two or part two or something. So look, there it is, round two. So Tricia, Steve, welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. We're back again. This is the same presentation that we discussed a couple of weeks ago.
Looks like it's on.
Now can you hear me? Yeah. This is the same presentation we gave a couple of weeks ago, so we're going to go through it lightning fast. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And I did bring all the red lines with me tonight, so if I need to look up anything, I can. It's big. So in round two of our UDO updates, we've got some changes to the individual zone districts. In Article 2, we made sure everything was in alignment. So if there was a use that was allowed in a zone district, we made sure that it matched the zone district where it was indicated. So all the Ps are permitted things, and S and S star have some additional restrictions that are all found within the UDO document. We reworded this section also in Article 2 just for clarity and uniformity. Throughout this whole document and all of the red line changes, we did not make any substantive changes. We didn't change the rules. We just wanted to make sure everything was uniform and matched throughout the entire document. So for example, we clarified in this medium density residential zone district how many dwelling units can be built on a property, just to make sure that the rules are clear. Again, we added uniformity to make sure that anyone that is doing a bed and breakfast or a daycare or a childcare in any zone district, that all the rules are the same. In Article 4, again, no substantive changes, just made sure all of the zone districts that needed to be included in here were included in the right locations. Some minor text amendments, again, not some substantive, but we want to make sure that all of our rules are in line with all of the state laws. Minor updates, text changes, and then Steve will talk a little bit about the MOU in 505.
Yeah, so a little bit of the same with Section 5 here, the traffic studies. So we require a memorandum of understanding for that. So we are simply inserting that language into the document. This is the document that would lay out the expectations for the traffic study. The language that's proposed has been reviewed and approved by the city engineer as well. So again, it isn't adding a regulation, it's just providing some clarity for all.
8.04, we just updated some of our setbacks for our signs. We wanted to make sure with the new building setbacks that were included with UDO that our sign regulations followed suit. We don't want to have an instance where a setback for a sign would place the sign behind the building. We want to make sure that it can be in the front where people can see it. 9.05, it was accidentally omitted, but we do want to have pitched roofs on accessory structures. This is important so that sheds and garages and residential zone districts fit in with the character of our fabulous neighborhoods. 9.07, again, just clarifying some of the regulations and updating language for consistency.
Section 12, a lot of formatting here, so just kind of quickly go through here. This first one, adding some additional rows to try to clarify some of these tables. So again, nothing new in terms of regulation, but just trying to provide some clarity, adding some new lines, reformatting or reorganizing where some of the items are in terms of, for instance, the accessory dwelling units. Adding some additional rows, so sort of separating the mixed use, the non-residential, and the 5+ unit residential buildings, so they all get their separate row. Adding or separating building additions and distinguishing for ED only. The clarity there with the 10,000 square feet that's really a correction. So that corrects the thresholds there for when it goes for admin review or for zoning administrator. And then at the bottom, again, adding a new line to talk about commercial parking waivers and which zoning districts that's allowed in. Again, it's not a new regulation, but we wanted to make sure that was in there as well so people could find that. Same thing on the next page, kind of separating signs and fences. They get their own row, adding a row for facade changes. Again, it's not new regulation, it's just putting it in this table so everybody can find it. Section 1207 talks about the waivers. So we already had in the ordinance the Planning Commission waiver. So we simply added the parking reduction waiver to that. Again, that isn't anything new. We were putting that back in the ordinance, and this seemed to be the appropriate spot for that. 1212, we actually are taking out the conversions in the LDR. That was something that was talked about early on with Udo and was supposed to be deleted, so that shouldn't have been in there. In its place, we have some language for type 2 home businesses. Again, it's not new, but that seemed to be a good spot to put that. It's in the procedures and process for the Board of Appeals. And then finally, the flag lots, providing some clarification for what zone district applies to those. And then essentially adding a sentence on the end of what isn't a flag lot. So again, as Tricia and I have commented several times, it's really not substantive. These are corrections and clarifications, some formatting issues. And the Planning Commission had their public hearing and recommended approval of the changes as you have been presented to you.
Thank you. Any questions from council members? I just have one, and you've had it at the end of every section, but I want to say it out loud. There are no substantive changes here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. What is the pleasure of council in regard to this item?
Move to approve as presented, the changes.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Hold on.
Oh,
Public
I'm sorry.
hearing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
So,
Just interrupt.
I know. I got too excited there. Going to have to open this up for a public hearing. I will now open the public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in regard to this particular item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Mr. Vreeman.
I will continue to bring a motion to approve the changes as presented.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Raymond. Any discussion? Seeing none, Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Corbin. Yes. Coronado.
Yes.
Aaronshorst.
Yes.
Hoekstra.
Yes.
Raymond. Yes. Freeman.
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Now, item 10B, Holland City Code, Section 22-10, Ordinance Amendment for final adoption. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Since Ron Vanderveen handed the meeting off last time to Vince, Ron actually is the one that did the work on this, and he can answer any questions. But basically, this is a simplification of some bureaucracy that we had in place that makes sense in how we handle sidewalk cafe permits.
Under the current ordinance, sidewalk cafe would need a permit to be a sidewalk cafe, and then a second permit if they're going to sell alcohol in that sidewalk cafe. And that would be in addition to the license requirements that under state law. And upon review, and then also they would pay two fees, a permit fee for each of the city permits. And in looking at this, the reviews are the same in terms of the administrative review for the permits, the two permits, and so we're just avoiding the duplication here.
All right, great. Thanks, Ron. Any questions from council members?
Looks like a beautiful thing to simplify something.
So we don't have to do the same review process twice.
Brian Lynn would be so yes.
All right, I will open this up for public hearing. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak in regard to this particular item? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And what is the pleasure of council in regard to this item?
Move we approve.
Moved by Hoekstra. Is there support? Support. I'm going to give that one to Coronado.
Do what you want.
Yeah. Any discussion?
I have a question. Just, can you clarify what the cafes and so is that currently downtown, or where are the cafes, or where are we talking about in general?
The, yeah, if you could, Tricia.
Sidewalk cafes are allowed throughout the city of Holland. So a sidewalk cafe occurs on public property, in the public right-of-way. The majority of our sidewalk cafes are in the downtown zone district, but other folks, like for example, in Washington Square, if there was a restaurant there, those folks could also apply to have a sidewalk cafe. So everything in the downtown area is reviewed by the Design Review Board, and then those permits are issued by the downtown review staff, and then anything else citywide is issued by our office.
Thank you.
Great. Any other discussion? Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Coronado,
Yes.
Aaronshorst,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Freeman,
Yes.
Corbin, and Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Now our item that was removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda, item 12E 4.3, speculative tax abatement. Mr. Van Beek.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, these are still relatively new, so I think it makes sense to go through and explain a little bit what a speculative IFT is versus a normal IFT. And we have with us tonight two experts, or at least learning to be experts, our Finance Director, Lynn McCammon, and then also Greg King, who is from Lakeshore Advantage and handles these IFTs on behalf of Lakeshore Advantage, but really provides that service to the city. So come on up, good folks.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to explain a little bit more about the speculative IFT. Just real quick here, just as a reminder, so Michigan Public Act 198 gives the tool of the IFT abatement, and we see that come through the city. Sometimes we've seen that in the past, and what it does, it allows those who qualify for that program to get a tax abatement of half. So they pay half of their property tax, and then they get a break for the half for a period of up to 12 years. So tonight, the speculative IFT has become, it's another tool, economic development tool, and it's designed to be used to incentivize developers to build buildings that would be attractive to tenants that could also qualify for these IFT type abatements. But there's sort of another step in the process, and that's what this is. So we've been working with Lakeshore Advantage and even reaching out to the State Tax Commission to get a little bit more understanding of how this program works, just to make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row as well. And so it's just a few more details that are needed for this abatement. And that's why I have with us this evening, Greg, to go in some of the more details, because you probably noticed when you saw this packet there was a lot of attachments. So we'll explain why there were so many attachments and what makes it just a little bit different than the normal IFT.
Sure. Thank you. Again, so a normal IFT tax abatement is submitted by a company for a building they are moving in. It's a 50% reduction on real property taxes for up to 12 years. A speculative one is submitted by a developer. So if a developer builds in this case, they're building one building with 7 units. If a company moves into that space and they apply for a tax abatement, only one company can get that abatement. Kind of renders the other 4 kind of null and void. For the other ones, the other companies, to get that abatement for the cost of the build-outs, the developer has to apply for a speculative tax abatement, one for each unit in that building. So that's why you're going to see 7 speculative tax abatements. The developer does not receive any reduction in taxes. It stays in place on that units. So again, think of unit 1. We have ABC company moves into unit 1. the developer has that speculative tax abatement in place. The city has hopefully approved that. They move in, if that's unit one costs, say, $100,000 to build. ABC company gets it for $100,000. They get the cost of the build out for that. And then they also submit a second abatement for any real property improvements that they want to make to that building. So the idea being that, again, with most buildings, only one IFT per building. For one that has a speculative tax abatement attached to it, they can apply for however many units the developer applies for it. So that's kind of what we see as a tool. We're seeing an increase in this. This has been in place since 1974. You just don't see it used that often because, as you can understand, it's a bit complicated. And with these, a developer can't build this building with a specific company in mind. It has to be unoccupied. So we have to work with the assessor to get a statement of non-occupancy, which is one of those additional documents you don't normally see, and that the assessor and the developer both sign saying that this was not built for anyone in mind, and at the time of the construction of the building, no one was in it. So that takes a bit of the pressure off. And then normally for a tax abatement, it takes a normal tax abatement. They have a 6-month timeline from when the building permit is pulled. The State Tax Commission looks at the building permit date as the official start date for a project. For a speculative one, they have 1 year to apply for a tax abatement. So that's kind of the different thing. Now, when a developer has a speculative tax abatement for a building, it's in place for up to 9 years. Again, the developer's not getting any tax breaks, no nothing. But if a company moves in that 8th year, they can apply for a 12-year tax abatement for that. So again, that's kind of the incentive for it. So that's a rough overview of the spec abatements. This is the second one that we worked on. City Council did approve one earlier this year for one that's Veterans Drive. And we are definitely seeing an increase at Lakeshore Advantage in these types of projects, not just in the city of Holland, but in some of our bordering communities as well.
Great, thank you. Questions from council? Yes, Mr. Hoekstra.
Thank you for that explanation. I'd ask to take this off because we don't get a lot of these, and my memory certainly had to be refreshed, and some of us probably haven't encountered these before. One question, we have, I think, 7 certificates involved in this application. So once we approve those, and the building is built and it's ready to go, and so a tenant moves in, are they automatically granted that, or they have to go through the process, and at that juncture, we go through our normal process of assessing and approving or disapproving?
So it's close to that. So a tenant, it's pretty. So a tenant moves in, and for that unit one, they then submit their own spec abatement for the exact cost of their unit. So the developer spec ones that you guys approve, you guys hold on to that. Those are normally sent to the State Tax Commission for them to approve. There's no tax break. They don't need to see it. So the city clerk's office holds on to that. A tenant moves into that space, whether leasing or purchasing, applies for a spec abatement for the exact cost of the unit they're in. And then there's another abatement if they are doing any real property improvements of their own as the company. So one for the build out of their unit, and the other for any improvements that they are doing.
Okay.
Great. Ms. Coronado?
Would you, so I'm new to this, explain the one on Veterans Drive? What was that kind of a business? And just help me understand what we did so far in the organization that has already applied for the abatement.
Yeah, so in that case, the developer worked with us. They were looking at building, that was I believe, a 30,000 square foot building on 105 Veterans Drive. And at the time, just based on the interest in, for industrial companies who needed smaller space, the developer was trying to figure out if they wanted to do 1 unit for the whole building or split it into 2. So after doing extensive conversations with Lynn and the State Tax Commission and the interest in local companies who needed extra space, we recommended that they go with the 2. So it's split into 2 units. So if one company moves into that space, it is still currently unoccupied right now, but if someone moves in, then they would then go through the process of applying for the spec abatement and applying for any improvements that they plan to make. So again, it's an incentive for the developer as an attraction tool that they can use in their kind of advertising for real estate. Like, hey, if you move in here, you can, with Lakeshore Advantages and the City of Holland's assistance, apply for abatements and get your property taxes reduced for a period of up to 12 years.
Thank you. And then, so if I understand this correctly, we apply as a city, or the developer does, and it's an umbrella, and then when the business moves in, they apply for it. Is that correct?
Correct. So the developer applies to the city for the speculative for each unit, and then once that's approved and a tenant comes in, they apply for a speculative for their individual unit that they're moving into. And then if they have any plans to do any real property improvements, they would then submit a third application. So there's anywhere from 2 to 3 applications per unit, depending on the plans for the building.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Nikki?
So the building's built, and no one's moved in for, like in Veterans Drive. Isn't there some deterioration going on with the building in the meantime? Let's say it takes, could be 9 years, 8 years before someone moves in.
In that case, I think it would, I mean, it's based on the value of the building. So, I mean, they're gonna take that into account when they apply for the tax abatement. So, yeah, there would be, depreciation over time for sure.
Depreciation,
And that would be taken into account with the value of the abatement itself.
It's all the paperwork.
Yeah, Scott?
So likewise, appreciation as well, as it grows in value too, right? That would be taken into consideration. I think I asked you this question the last time, is when does this expire? If someone were to move in, apply, and they move out, does that expire, and does one then have to reapply? And then does that start the 12-year cycle all over again? So could someone move in, stay there 11 years, move out, a new person moves in? Does that start the 12-year cycle all over again, or does it just finish up that 12-year cycle?
It would finish it up. We would work with them ideally to do a transfer. There's a transfer IFT. It's very simple. It's just transferring the remaining value, in that case 1 year if they wanted it, over to that business. But the 12 years is final. So once it's done at the 12th year, no more, unless they plan to make any more additional real property improvements of their own.
So we could potentially, let's just say 23 years that this could, because someone could in year 11 apply for a 12-year. No?
No, this speculative, this first step in the process is, I'm gonna make something up here. It's the master agreement. So that master agreement sets the 12-year shot clock.
Okay.
And that holds. So when Greg talks about you can come in, that would be like we have all the time where a company says, hey, we did something, but then they go back in and they do further investment. That new and further investment, then they could do an IFT for that new investment. But this one that you're considering tonight is the master agreement that sets the 12 years.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions from council members? Yes, Nikki?
And so in the meantime, the builder or the owner of the land is still paying property taxes?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, you good? All right, anyone else? Yes, Lynn?
So after the 9 years, do they do people, I mean, would it be their intention to reapply if they haven't filled it by then? Can they reapply?
Our understanding is once that 9 years is there, it's done. So,
Okay.
and again, the tax abatement only goes to industrial companies, so it can't be, they have to fit an industrial processing definition. So it doesn't just go to any random company moving in. They do still have to meet that criteria that the state tax commission holds them to.
I have another question, but it's not related to the speculative program. On the first slide, it said at the bottom that anybody who gets a tax abatement has to report to the city annually. What do they report?
So when, commonly if you see, like when we do the write-up in the council report, you'll see that we like talk about how many jobs they plan to create and information like that, and employees. So they actually have to submit every year. We just sent them out recently. We send them to all the companies that have IFTs, and they have to submit numbers of employment and different statistics on their operations. And we keep those.
Is there any consequence if they don't meet their expectations? Our expectations?
I have not encountered any yet.
So all of the IFTs that we have, and in other communities that I've worked in has too, they have, we refer to it as the clawback. And the clawback would be if there's significant, which is always what's significant, right? But if there's a failure to produce what was promised, then we have the ability to go back and not just discontinue the abatement moving forward, but have thus clawback. We can go back and claw back the abatement that they have. This really gets more into legal matters, Mr. Vanderveen, and like state tax commission type things. They're not very often that it happens, but there absolutely have been examples across the state and in a community that I worked before where we had very serious conversations about clawing back or not.
All right. Any other questions? Seeing none, we need to open this up for, no, we don't do a public hearing on this. We're setting it for public hearing, right?
Correct.
So we just need to do a motion and then roll call vote on this. Yep. What's the pleasure of council?
I move that we set a public hearing for tax abatement for the speculative, the FPA 198 speculative tax abatement for
Great.
electric steel.
Moved by Airsource. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Hoekstra. Any discussion? Brenda, would you please call the roll?
Aaron's-Horst,
Yes.
Hoekstra,
Yes.
Raymond,
Yes.
Vreeman,
Yes.
Corbin, Coronado,
Yes.
Mayor Box.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Item 13, communications from the city manager.
We haven't done this joke for a while yet, Mayor, but I don't think it's 7:30 yet, so I have lots of time, right?
You always have all the time you would like to
Okay.
have, Mr. Van Beek.
I do
We'd
have
love to hear from
several items tonight, but I promise they probably are all relatively quick. First of all, Mr. Corbin reminded me, and I appreciated that we did a first tradition last year. That came up, I forgot, it was one of your ideas, and we followed through, where we're going to provide you all, we're gonna divvy up our workforce amongst 9, but if anyone's not able to, and we're gonna give you a box of blank thank you cards and addresses for employees, and then kind of a hit list along with it that says where they work and what their job is and everything. And I think that fills a need where you were looking to do different things to appreciate our employees. So we are working on that. Probably next week, Wednesday, we'll have that for you, and for anyone that isn't able to meet the meeting, we'll get it to you. And then if anyone, for any reason, no worries at all, just let me know if you can't or participate, and then we'll divvy it to 8 or 7 or whatever that be. So that's in process, and you will get that. I'm thinking next Wednesday is where we'll try to distribute that. Someone else might say, so I won't take it, but it was great to have a successful and, more importantly, just thank you to a large group of city employees across many departments that contributed to a safe parade last night, certainly with a lot of recent events in the nation. We always have stepped up efforts in that area, but we paid probably even a little more careful attention, and really we're just more a little public about it this time. So thank you to all of our staff that provided for that. Reminder tomorrow, certainly for employees, not a public thing, but also for all of you as council members, we have our employee holiday luncheon. And while that was originally going to be at 12 o'clock, I think we've communicated to you all that we bumped it back a half hour because of a conflict, unfortunately, with the loss of one of our employees in a funeral service tomorrow. So if you're able to make it, certainly not mandatory or anything, but we'd love to see you there. There's a rumor that 2 of our employees have fun at that, and I don't know what they're coming dressed up as this year, so that could be your surprise. Thank you to Cinca. You all have a gift at your space tonight. Info cards, we're still kind of doing this. This is the second version of this, but it's basically, and I'll admit, my memory is not what it used to be, and I can't tell you how many times I'm asked, what's the SCV of the city, or all kinds of random facts. So what we tried to do is put a lot of random facts on something easy that fits into my wallet, but maybe your wallets or purses otherwise. So we'll do this every year. So hopefully that's helpful if you can read it, because it's small. Reminder, there was the request, and we have set up, so I think it's in my Friday communication, but Dave Miedema will be joining us next week, and we'll do an orientation session and kind of facilitate a conversation on governance. That does not replace, however, we will, as part of the advance, do our annual self-evaluation of the governance process and structure. And then finally, you either have or will get a notice about a public outreach workshop, which recall is something that we did more recently when we make a change in a neighborhood and we reach out. And this one you might be like, what's this about? And it's for the home flats development on the corner of 24th and Waverly. And you might say, I thought that's already approved. We're just waiting for them to pull the trigger. And actually what happened there is that there was a strip of land that was part of the development that always was there that was added to the parcel. And that has been executed now, but the size of it was a little bit different. And in the UDO process, it really triggers that we, following our rules, because that's what we do, we follow our rules. We're having a public outreach workshop on December 20 at 5 o'clock here at City Hall. It kind of sounds like our other UDO process earlier tonight. There's nothing new. There's not like a new change to the site plan or anything. But if you see that and are like, just wanted to take this brief opportunity to explain to you why we're doing that, because it's really a public outreach meeting on a project that for all practical purposes has already been approved. And I promised I'd be quick. That was relatively quick, so that's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
That was very quick. Just because I know that the audience at home is dying to know what the SEV is of the city of Holland. It is $1,769,939,900.
And
what's
see
without
how
my
easy
glasses
that
on.
was to read? It worked.
Without my glasses on, yes. So I do have one appointment, and that is I would ask the council to please accept the reappointment of Alex Calder to the Compensation Commission for his second full term, said full term expiring November 30, 2027, and I'd be looking for a motion in that regard.
Move to approve that motion.
Moved by Vreeman. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Coronado. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. That is all I have. Now looking for appointments, motions, and communications from council members, and I'm going to recognize Mayor Pro Tem Corbin right now.
Right, so we have one appointment or correction of an appointment. Please accept the correction of Mr. Paul Lilly to the Board of Holland Board of Public Works, and that would be under the Water Safety Advisory Council. A corrected date of March 11th, 2026 for his term.
And looking for a motion in that regard.
So move.
Moved by Aaron Source. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Vreeman. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other communication motions from council members?
No, I'll take in Quincy's, he would say, what a great parade that was. And I agree with your assessment. It was tons of fun. Fun to be back. It was a couple of years. First parade, it was our second, because we missed last year's. And it was just the people, and it was just a lot of fun. Everybody saw the city employees and other volunteers of the community, and it was a wonderful event, I thought. Great way to kick off the season, and I don't know, just a community feel. So.
Ms. Coronado? No? Yes?
Yes. I was just going to say it was a great first parade for me and Shadow, my service dog, who I just got Monday night. So she is in training. We're in training, so no petting, but thank you for everyone. We had a blast. So Only thing I'd like to see is maybe some music or singing some carols. But it was a great time.
Anyone else? There's just one more motion I would entertain then this evening.
Move to adjourn.
Ooh, moved in her best Mike Trethewey voice. Moved by Aaron Source. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Coronado. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.